I always believed that a man walking his dog was the ultimate sign of a quiet, safe neighborhood, but after 2023, I realized that sometimes the most normal routines can hide the most unsettling secrets. He wasn't just a neighbor, he was waiting for the right moment. It started in late 2023. I lived in a calm area where everyone kept to themselves. I'd see him maybe 3 times a week. An average looking man in his 60s, always wearing the same blue windbreaker every morning when I left for work. He was there every evening. He was there again. He had a golden retriever, and he would always stare a deep, unblinking look that followed me until I closed my front door. One day, I tried to be friendly. I asked him if he had received the community newsletter. He looked completely caught off guard, as if he couldn't believe I was speaking to him. He just muttered no, and walked away. From that day on, I started seeing him, even more, twice a day, every single day. By March, I was living alone. My house backed up directly against a national forest, miles of dense trees. Right behind my fence, my mom stayed with me for a bit, and she noticed him too. He would stand on the sidewalk, just watching the house for long periods. We thought he might just be a lonely person. We wanted to believe he was harmless. After my mom left, things got strange. I'd be in my backyard late at night, and I'd hear footsteps, rhythmic, heavy steps in the woods, just a few feet behind my fence. Then small things started disappearing. From my patio table, lighters, small items, things I knew I had left there the night before. I felt like I was being watched through the gaps in the wooden fence. One afternoon in June, I saw it. I was driving out of the neighborhood and spotted the blue jacket, but he wasn't on the sidewalk. He was at the edge of the forest, disappearing into the thick brush. That's when it hit me. The same clothes every day. The strange behavior. He wasn't a resident of this neighborhood. He was living in the woods behind my house. Shortly after, a new family moved into the vacant house next door. That was the last day I ever saw the man in the blue jacket. The new neighbors later found blankets and personal items hidden in trees right behind the property line. They cleared it all out, thinking it was just debris. I stayed in that home until October 2025, but I never felt the same way about those woods again. About 5 years ago, me and my family moved house. We only moved a couple of streets away from our previous home. Our new place was nice, but it needed a lot of work, and it didn't have a security alarm yet, which felt a bit strange. Anyway, the very first night we spent in the house, we were all asleep upstairs. It was me and my wife in our room, my daughter in her room, and my son in his. I was suddenly woken up by someone walking into our room. It was my 4-year-old son, rubbing his eyes and saying he had been woken up by banging noises. I told him to get into our bed, but it was too small for all of us. So I decided to swap beds with him, and I went to lie down in his room instead. For a few seconds of lying there, I heard the same banging noises he had mentioned. I wasn't sure what it was, so I went to check. I walked out of my son's bedroom toward the stairs. At the top of the stairs, there is a window where you can look down and see the side of the house, specifically the back door that leads straight into our kitchen. I looked out to see if I could spot anything causing the noise, and that's when I saw them. There were about 4 or 5 men dressed in casual clothes and ski masks standing right outside the side door. They had the lights of their phones shining on our house, and the man at the front was yanking the handle, trying to force his way inside. It took me a second to realize this wasn't a dream. I don't know why I reacted the way I did, but I just opened the window, poked my head out, and looked down at them. I simply said, "Excuse me guys, you need to leave, right now." I wasn't even shouting. I was strangely calm. But the weirdest part was their reaction. They all just turned around and walked away. Immediately. Was no urgency and no scrambling. They just wandered off as if they had just heard an announcement that a train was canceled. We called the police straight away, and none of us slept for the rest of the night. It was terrifying because it was our very first day in the new home. I hated the house after that and didn't feel safe at all. The next day, the police came, and we immediately installed a high-end alarm system and new locks. We found out that a gang had been robbing several houses in the neighborhood that same night. The door handle was hanging on by a thread, They were seconds away from getting inside. If my son hadn't woken me up, I never would have heard them, and I hate to think what would have happened next. Here in the States, we have a store called Dollar Tree. My daughter used to love going there just to look around. We went in one afternoon, back in 2006. She was about 10 years old at the time, so I would allow her to look at things on one aisle while I looked at items nearby. I would check on her every few minutes to see if she wanted to move on to something else. Suddenly, I noticed a tall man hanging around exactly where we were browsing. He didn't seem to be looking at anything in particular. And honestly, he wasn't looking at products at all. It was more like he was just waiting for something, and it immediately set my senses off, giving me a very strange vibe. I went directly to my daughter and stayed right next to her. With my hand firmly on her shoulder, she could tell something was wrong and looked at me with confusion, but didn't say anything. I tried changing aisles to stay in a different area, but within seconds, he would appear right next to us on the new aisle. I quietly told my daughter to please not ask any questions and just follow me no matter where I went. She followed my lead without hesitation, decided to cross the store to a far corner in the opposite direction, and within a minute, he was right behind us again. I immediately moved to another distant part of the store, but the same thing happened. He ended up wherever we were, from the stationery section to the grocery area and the makeup aisle. I was becoming very nervous, but I was a young mom, and I didn't want to cause a scene by calling an employee. I told my daughter to under no circumstances leave my side or let go of me. I was so unsettled that I decided we would just check out and leave. As soon as we got in line to pay, the man got in the register, lying right next to me. It seemed like he wanted to leave the store at the exact same time as we did. The second we finished checking out, he headed straight for the door. I told my daughter to take my hand and not let go, no matter what I told her. That as soon as we got to the car, she needed to get in and lock her door immediately while I got into the driver's seat. As we walked quickly toward the car, I risked a look back and saw the man coming right behind us. He was far enough away that we had time to get inside and lock the doors before he could reach us. I lived right down the street from that store, but I took a long and scenic route home just to make sure I wasn't being followed. I don't know what his intentions were, but it felt sinister to this day. Nearly 20 years later, my daughter still brings this story up, and it still makes me feel sick to my stomach thinking about what could have happened. I was in the Netherlands on a work trip and found myself alone in a hotel with nothing to do. I decided to go on a dating app to meet someone and started chatting with a guy who seemed very attractive and nice. He lived quite far away, so we agreed to meet halfway, which was a 5-kilometer walk. For me, when I arrived, I found myself in a lonely and gloomy part of town. He looked even better than his photos, but his personality was cold and reserved. He only spoke in short sentences, with no emotion at all. Despite the strange vibe, I agreed to go back to his place, which was another 5 kilometers away deep in the countryside. As soon as we arrived, my phone lost all signal. The house looked like it belonged to an old lady, full of ancient decorations. He told me he inherited it from his grandmother and lived there alone. He took me to the living room and claimed to be a fashion designer using innovative technology. He started acting very strange, complaining that a famous designer had stolen his ideas. He showed me videos of his fashion shows, and his behavior became increasingly erratic and intense. After a very uncomfortable moment, he told me he would be right back and went upstairs to the second floor. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. I shouted to ask if he was okay, and he just told me to wait. I didn't hear any water running or any noise at all. My mind started racing with dark scenarios. Was he preparing something? Was he sharpening a weapon? I decided I had to leave immediately, but when I went to the front door, I realized it was locked from the inside. I tried the kitchen door, and that was locked too. I was trapped in a house in the middle of the woods with a stranger who was acting completely unstable. After 50 minutes, he finally came back downstairs with an impassive look on his face and told me he wanted to stay with me. I told him I had to go back to my hotel immediately, but he insisted I stay. I asked for his Wi-Fi password so I could find my way back, and as I crouched down to look at the modem, I saw him reach for something hidden behind a piece of furniture. I panicked, thinking it was a weapon. I grabbed a lamp from a side table and held it up like a shield, telling him he had to let me out right now. He looked surprised, but led me to the kitchen to get the keys. Key opened a drawer in the dark, and I heard the sound of metal clinking. Thinking it was a knife, I turned on the light and kept brandishing the lamp. He just took the keys out and opened the door. As soon as I was outside, I ran as fast as I could through the dark countryside, still holding the lamp in my hand. It took me 2 hours to get back to safety, and I still wonder what he was doing upstairs for all that time. Thank you for watching tonight. If you have ever had a strange encounter that you can't explain, leave a comment down below. I read every single one of them, and it helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more true horror every week. Stay safe out there, and I will see ya in the next one.